Hi, Kaitlyn.
Hi, Tia.
I'm so excited to have you on this show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for hosting me. I'm so excited to chat.
So, you have an incredible, diverse experience and background. And I would like to start off by having the listeners here. What drove you, what motivated you to start this company and to really, I see this as a mission in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, what motivated you?
Oh man. I always knew I wanted to go into business. I started in a family business and saw what my grandparents, who have since passed, built and how they built that. And I really believed in a lot of their mission and goals that they had. And so when I went on to university and didn't know what I wanted to do, I kind of thought that people are 90% of your assets and liabilities. So why don't I do HR? That seems like if I'm going to have a business, I will have to deal with humans. That's a great place to start. And so going on to the workforce after that, I was very fortunate and got to go to some amazing large companies like Lockheed Martin during my master's and then Google on their comp and Ben's team. And I got to see what a, well-funded, well-oiled comp machine could look like. And really got to see how much that impacts people's lives. I have a post that I talk about why we work is fascinating. Something that I studied was the fact that humans every day wake up in our comfy beds, get ready, go out, and we interact with strangers towards a shared goal that doesn't really have anything to do with our personal lives necessarily, right? Like the idea of going in to be an accountant isn't necessarily something that derives warmth or food as an activity. But the reason we do that activity is to get income so we can have sustainable food, shelter, be able to support our families.
Right.
And that fascinated me at a core for why we would work. And with something as I dove into compensation, it just kept evolving more and more. When you have conversations with employees, they're very emotional. This is an extremely emotional tie for them. And then you start to realize that socioeconomic status matters a ton to how different persons of different backgrounds can succeed in life. So women and minorities tend to fall in lower socioeconomic statuses. And that directly correlates to their healthcare access and their education access, their ability to better themselves and their future generation. And socioeconomic status is actually hereditary. What your parents' socioeconomic status was is highly correlated to what yours will be. And I found that to be fascinating when you go into comp then, and you see all of these decisions that are being made in a vacuum, sometimes with very little data or assessment going into it. And then there's these companies like Google as an example, and Lockheed and all these others who leaned into how do we make a better pay decision? How do we pay fairly and equitably? And you saw all those movements kind of come forward around, equal pay. And we know that that pay gap hasn't closed,
Right.
trying to focus on DEI in the recent years. And it hit me that I had built, over my 10 years in comp, this deep knowledge of what a good system could look like. I had seen places where it was done well. And then I went to startups and they were all lost and they didn't know how to tackle it, weren't sure the steps to take. And I did. So I wanted to make that knowledge accessible through a product that streamlined the workflows. And I found a bunch of amazing, like-minded people around me who agreed that they wanted to have equal pay and opportunity for all. So it sort of started this organic path from my childhood and the inspiration I had. But I think that it's just the fact that pay is all around us and it shouldn't be as taboo as it is.
Yes, yes. Well, that is so, honorable because obviously you could have stayed at a large corporation where it's done well. And, there's obviously security and less risk, as someone, I also came from the corporate world where
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's easy, but, as opposed to starting your own, but that you wanted to help way more people and, smaller organizations. And like you said, startups too. So I know from insider information, good insider information, that you and the team that has created your company, I know you're up to 50 employees and are growing now, have created a high performing, but very positive culture. And so I would really like to hear for maybe someone listening that doesn't have that or is working
Mhm.
towards having a very both high performing and positive motivated culture, what do you do? You know, what does a leadership group do? Have they done to create this type of environment where people thrive and they're happy while they're working?
Great question. I mean, we adore our team. And I think that when Warren and I, my co-founder, as well as my husband, we came in to build Packwoody, and we both had worked at various startups in the Bay Area, consulted with a bunch as well. And what we saw was that there's these companies who are very successful, who sometimes had a great culture or had a really bad culture, and they often had an attrition problem.
Mhm.
And when we worked at companies like that, we said, you know, this could have been the best experience ever. This could have been somewhere where we would have hung our hat for years to come. And what is it about that that we could have changed? And what can we build at Pequity where we could be that company that we wish that we had? And
Mhm.
so when we leaned into this, it really came from a lot of our personal values. I would say that we are both relatively, I hope this is fair to say, that we're relatively calm individuals. We really do see the human side of all of our employees. And I think that that came from, you know, my growing up in a family business, um, seeing how when you take on a business, you do assume this mantle of responsibility as almost a community leader.
Mhm.
Now, Pequity is fully remote and distributed, but um, I do take it very seriously that these people, you know, to the point on comp, they're coming to us for a livelihood. We are helping support their personal endeavors. And you need to make sure that work is a delightful place to be as well, because to some degree, there's going to be the value of comp that you can offer them to have a personal life, but then they're spending the majority of their lives in the office with you. So when we looked out and kind of said, what culture do we want to build? We said it needs to be purposeful. We built a couple of values um, up front around what we valued. They have changed since, but our starting ones were let's meet people where they're at. We believe that that was with customers and our individual employees. Customers all have unique needs, so we have to build our product that meets them there. And we
Mhm.
also recognize that we put out a job description, but when people come into the company, they're coming with their own unique set of information. They have children, they might be living in an expensive city, they might have hobbies or activities that they want to support.
Yeah.
And we wanted to build a culture that was supportive of that. For us, that is leaning into this idea that I tell all of our new hires this as well. I don't know how many hours they're on their computer. And it does matter that they are working during normal hours and helping the team move forward, but I'm not interested in micromanaging you. We have goals, we have deadlines, we have quality metrics. If you are hitting those, that's what I care about most. And if you are helping the team move forward and you're, you know, encapsulating all the values that the company has, that's what I'm going to lean into. Not was, you know, Bob on the computer for 10 hours today. Because I think there's diminishing returns when you do that. The other area that we kind of leaned into is my truth is now. This is a value that really goes into the idea that we're iterative as a company. We don't think that we have the perfect information ever to make the right decision.
Right.
And what that means is if new data comes in, we have to encourage and be open to adapting to that new information. So leaning into that with our employees, it kind of takes out the guilt if you have to change or something goes wrong. It's just there's new
Mm.
data. Let's present that. Let's talk about it. Let's be curious, but
Yeah.
we're not going to penalize in a shameful way. I want to encourage that you'll talk to me about these data inputs because I need to move the business forward. And the last one is just leave every space better than how you found it. I grew up with that, and it applies, I think, in many ways of life. We are remote again, but I tell people, you know, if there were dirty dishes in the sink, we would ask you to put them away. So if you're in a Slack channel, help make it better. If you're in someone's code, make it better. If you're seeing someone struggle with a project, offer to help. We want to rise and fall. I don't use the term family intentionally because I think that's a confusing perspective, but we are a
Mhm.
pack. We call ourselves a
Mhm.
Pequity pack, and we rise and fall as a pack. So those were the initial values that we came in with. And a lot of what we did was being very purposeful about who we hire, like leaning into making sure these people add to the culture, whether you want to believe it or not when you're young, like those early hires set the tone
Mhm.
heavily for the rest of time because they're going to set the internal, you know, agreed societal boundaries. Like, what do we joke about in channels? Like, how do we communicate with each other? Is
Right.
it acceptable to Slack after hours? Is it acceptable for me to post a photo of my child or my dog in these channels? Those things are important. And if you want
Mhm.
those things to happen, you have to seed it. People won't naturally, they might naturally do it, but you have to encourage, like you have to be the gardener on this little plant.
Yeah.
And if you don't pay attention, it will grow. And there is no easy solution once it has grown in a certain way. You
Mhm.
have to kind of accept those channels or go through a very hard redesign. And that's expensive. And I think it's
Yeah.
where a lot of stars fall.
Right. Many people are changing jobs right now, finding
Yes.
different companies, changing industries. I'm calling it the great hiring, look at
Yeah.
the positive. Like there's all of these, there's a lot of great hiring. So, I would say 99% of the companies I work with are struggling with unwanted turnover. People that they don't want
Yes.
to leave are leaving. And so could you give maybe two or three strategies or two or three tactics that you and your team use that people listening could implement when to hire the right people?
Yes. I mean, we are a compensation software. So I always say, like, walk the walk and talk the talk.
Yep.
So we start very transparently about comp. I know we'll probably talk about this a little later, but we are launching a new product called salary boards to help post our ranges to our open job posts.
Yeah.
We'll be launching that for free for companies to use with us because we believe that the new direction of the world is in this more transparent direction.
Yeah.
People do have more opportunities, they have more options. They're going to ask the questions, and you should be prepared for that. And there's a way to be prepared for that at scale, which is with systems and tools that we're building. So we like to, very upfront start with a very strong job description and leveling and know what the comp is going into those conversations so that we don't lead people along or, get really far down the road and be like, oh, shoot, you're too expensive for us. Or, oh, hey, like we were looking for someone more senior. We don't have a role for you.
Yeah. So much wasted time on for both parties.
So wasted, which
Yeah.
it sounds very basic. And I think a lot of companies do invest in, but it's shocking how many don't,
Yeah.
especially in this current world. And I think the next thing that we've really leaned into, which could be helpful, is having, when we get into these conversations with employees, what I like to call, or I guess candidates, we call them breakup conversations. Um, the way that I look at it, each individual who comes in is unique, and who you need as we're 50 employees, who we needed for our first 10 employees was very different than who we're hiring today.
Right.
And that doesn't mean that those first 10 employees don't have value. It doesn't mean that they still can't do something. They're just different. They can evolve with you as you grow, but sometimes you'll hire what I like to call cowboys, the Wild West seekers. They love the adventure and drive of an early day company. And when you get to a certain size, there isn't as much Wild West needed, right? Like you are putting in process and
Mhm.
systems, like other people on the team are going to rely on that person to do things in a certain way to get their tasks done.
Right.
And that means it could become a place where it's no longer a good fit for that person. And that sometimes is a shock. And I think what companies do wrong as they're sourcing, recruiting, and interviewing candidates is they're not being upfront about that.
Mm.
And so when we go into those conversations with candidates, I often like to have this breakup conversation. I do it with leaders, with employees, with VCs, even that we take investments from,
Yeah.
where I ask them, if we look 3 to 6 months down the road, what would it be that would cause you to leave? What is it about Pequity or myself as a leader that you would say this is upsetting and this goes so far against the grain for me that I can no longer work here?
Mhm.
And we talk it through. A lot of it's what you'd expect, which is like not having appropriate expectations set, feeling confused about, their goals or the projects the team's going to have them working on.
Yeah.
And then the other things that I like to lean into is, hey, like I'm hiring you to do this today. We're a fast growing company. I might be giving you this title. We actually, as a rule, avoid a lot of titling at Pequity because we're hiring so quickly. I know it's going to change. But
Mhm.
I tell them, like, if I'm bringing you into this, there may come a time when I will have to layer you. Is that going to be okay? Because I will have to make that decision as a business leader to move the business forward. And I just want to know how to handle that situation. If that is a red flag for you, and that will essentially be my way of knowing that you're going to terminate the second I tell you, that's okay. Like, that's not a bad outcome. I want you to make the right choices for you as an employee that's good for your personal life.
Right.
But I want to understand the path for us to go forward in the case that that happens. I call it neutralizing the nukes, so that we're not in this tense, bitter situation where you're mad at me because I didn't tell you that this would come. And I'm in a desperate need to like move the business forward. And I have to force us both down a road that we don't want to go onto.
Mhm.
And I think it's a very powerful way to frame the conversation as a breakup conversation. It sounds very negative. Some people are like, oh, this is really heavy to have. But your choice is either to have that heavy conversation now when you're both happy and in a good place,
Yeah.
or down the road when they're caught off guard. They had no idea this could even be a potential. They've already signed a contract with you. They feel like their life is depending on you. And that's an uglier situation to have that discussion during.
Right. Love that. And there is so much need in the world of work for this. And it really takes some intention and thought and planning on behalf of whether it's a people leader or an executive, whoever in the organization, or multiple people, to actually think through what those, what you call the nukes, what those could be.
Yes.
I think having that, but it also just shows, it shows respect. It shows, that you're looking ahead and foresight. So those are really, really, really valuable. So would love to jump into the new legislation. And I know
Yes.
it's not happening all, every single state, but there are states where there is a need for companies to share salaries on job listings, to be transparent, because, I know, and I'm not saying every hotel company is like this, but from me working in the hotel industry for 14 years, people could have 4, 5, 6 interviews with different people, then find out, oh, it's not this, or it doesn't include this, or, so would love for you to talk about that. And then also share, because you have some really valuable tools that are free for companies to use right now. So please talk about this.
Yes. No, the salary transparency laws are coming. They started last year with Colorado. Some countries, I believe around, I think Ontario, for instance, had this for a while. But what we saw just in January and February was New York City. I believe Illinois, Washington State, the UK has just announced this, where they will be asking companies to post a reasonable salary range onto all open job postings. Now, when this first came out, there was a California law around if a candidate asked, you were required to provide them a reasonable range for the role. And it opened this whole internal debate for companies of what is a reasonable range. Some companies do have pay bands that they use.
Yeah.
So sometimes they're very broad. I've seen bands that go from like 100 to 190, and it's like, where does that person sit on that scale?
Yeah, that's a really wide, yeah.
Very wide range. And then there's ones that use targets where it's like, well, I am targeting 110, and it's not a range, but we know that there's flexibility around this. So a lot of companies struggled with how to address it. And I think that will occur again. There's going to have to be this greater definition. The California law did get further defined, where it was like only candidates could ask for it. A reasonable range was anything that would be justifiable for a new hire in role, which helped companies kind of frame up their systems for it. But I think the unique thing that we're seeing with this new requirement spreading en masse across the states in the UK is there isn't a great system for it. And I felt that we're a fully remote distributed company. And I was like, we're going to have to handle this too. And if I'm hiring a software engineering role, I don't know where that's coming from. It's called an evergreen rec. I just always have it open. I'm accepting any candidate from anywhere that they come from, because engineering talent is on fire. And if I find a great person, I don't care if they're in Mexico or the UK or Ireland, like it could be anywhere, but I want to be able to represent to them exactly what they can expect for pay. So the cool thing about Pequity, we are a compensation management software. We help companies manage and create their ranges in an automated form. We help them share their data to their talent acquisition and managers. We help them with offers management. So we actually shave 2 days off of the average time to engineering offer, and on average save companies $100,000 in the first week of using us, based on our sample size of 1,000 employee companies. And we also lean into comp cycle management. So helping people go through their comp planning process and building better programs. So when we looked across all that, we were like, well, we have the ranges, We know how it maps to their ATS. We know how it maps to their HRIS. So their applicant tracking systems, sorry, and their HR information systems. And that part's already automated. So what if there was a way for us to literally take a single link, add it to job postings, and show the range for companies and give them an admin dashboard that they can manipulate how much of a range to show or what components of their comp program they want to be transparent about. Some companies, I think, will lean very heavily into this and show, here's our salary, our equity, our bonus, everything you want to know.
Vacation. I always like vacation, right? That's
total rewards. It's like a thing. And we want to be able to support that. And I think other companies will have to baby step it. They're going to start with, I'm just going to show the low to mid of my range because that's the most common tactic. And that's what I want to post. But that takes to do that at scale. If you are especially hiring above like 50 roles, to go into every single rec, predict every location it's coming into, try to figure out, well, okay, if a candidate's in Nebraska, but then we find someone in Florida, does the range update? That's a headache. Yeah. And so what we can do is, it's so much work, and it's a whole person, at least a full dedicated FTE to that. Yeah. And that's not moving the business forward necessarily. That's just in a compliance-based role, which isn't great. So our thought was, if we already have the tech, let's build a system to do this. And so we're leaning into it. We're launching it for free because we're going to be using it anyways. And I think that this transparency can only make the world better. A perfect economy is where both sides have equal access to information. Mm-hmm. And we want to help support that, not just for companies, but for the candidates and employees as well, to build this repository where they can look at ranges all within the threshold of what the company is comfortable with.
Right. And I can't help but think that this is going to truly, and I'm sure it already does, support the type, alignment with the type of people who are showing interest, who are applying, just the time. And I think for leaders, for people running companies, for people running teams, time is the most valuable resource. Of course, money as well. But if, everyone, if you don't have 3 interviews with people that really weren't the right fit, weren't in the right range, all of that. So,
and I think it's difficult to share. Like, the thing beyond the systems that'll be difficult for companies is they're now going to be exposing ranges that maybe their own internal employees didn't even have access to.
Right.
And that's going to be a culture shift. It's going to be an education, explaining this is how we hire, like this is how we make decisions. And here's when we follow the rules, there are exceptions, and this is when that happens. Mm-hmm. And what excites me is that's what we built originally with our offers tool, was a way to manage those in-range offers as well as the exceptions, document everything, build approval chains that are automated and routed, collect data for how is it compared to internal peers, how is it compared to your ranges, the market data, all on like a single screen. It happens in seconds. And I think that is the power of automation. It can help not just get past this, well, I don't have a system to do it at scale, but also help with the education where you can be more transparent because there's more consistency. You have more control of the actual activities going on in the org. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why, to your point, there has been so much time spent on these things. Yeah. A lot of people spend months building their comp programs each year. And that's because it impacts so many people and there's no scalable way to communicate it. And it's scary. It's really scary to have to go out to your employees and say, hey, here's a range and you might not be at the top of it. And having to explain that to them is not easy.
Yeah, those difficult conversations. But, the research shows that, and everybody, a lot, obviously I am this expert of happiness at work, and people think, managers think that the biggest driver of happiness at work is money, and it's not. You need to be paying at market. You need to be paying equitable and fair. Absolutely. But for people's emotional experience of feeling excited, feeling pride, feeling, I think you used the word, there was a word that you used. It might've been joyful. Oh, you said work as a delightful place to be, right? All of that. That doesn't come from your paycheck every single week. It comes from how you're treated, collaboration, transparency, working on purposeful work. There's so many pillars to it. So I think it's also an education to leaders of saying that talking about money and that we can take away the fear and just have it be educational, and know that that's not really the biggest driver of happiness while working, which is what people want. They want them to like where they work.
Exactly. It's just the easiest lever, comp. It's everyone gets paid, everyone would love more pay. Everyone would love
Yeah.
more money.
Yeah.
But to your point, I could pay for some roles or companies I've been at. I've seen the pay that we give people. It's a lot. And they will sometimes take a pay cut to go work on something that they're really passionate about, or to go to that company that they're like, oh, but this company really treats you well. A shocking factor that I often like to talk about, Google pays top of market, but that doesn't mean that they pay top for every single role.
Right.
They pay top for their market. There are places where you can get more comp than Google, and that shocks people sometimes. Like, it's true though. And it's the difference though is that they do have this amazing culture and people want to work there. They're taken care of. They have the amazing offices, this amazing employee experience, and that means something.
Yeah.
And it comes up in negotiate. I can tell you, I mean, the number of negotiations I've had where people are like, oh, well, my shuttle won't pick me up right outside my apartment. And so I want to have compensation to offset that. Like, people put a dollar bill to those culturally significant items.
Right.
And you could latch onto that too and build it. But I get that sometimes is hard, right? Like, that's the harder road to go down. And it's not up to the managers always, it's up on, to the leaders and the HR teams.
Right.
Which is why it's easy to point and be like, well, that's hard. That's on you. So comp is what I want to talk about,
Right. So my last question for you is, you are obviously a very busy individual. You're building a team and you're making positive changes in the world of work. What do you do to keep your cup full, to take care of your own well-being, and take care of your own happiness? What do you do when you're not working?
I often describe it to my fellow leaders and like my team as, I think that sometimes you can give yourself like a brain cramp. Like, if you ever work out a ton, you like a cramp in your leg, like you can't keep running. It's not actually really conducive.
You need to walk.
You need to walk. You have to slow down sometimes.
Yeah.
And for me, again, like I have a very supportive family that I came from, but I grew up actually with my grandmother's an artist. So I love to paint, and I will go and like do these very creative pursuits. It's like I try to go in the furthest direction from work possible with my brain. If I'm in spreadsheets all day, which is where I often am living, if I'm doing negotiations and tough conversations, I want to go somewhere that is completely creative and free from that, to give my brain that break from the cramp that I might be feeling. And I also like to make sure that there's something that, there's like the creative that like gives you joy. I like to work out to like, just feel physically fit. And I think that that's really important to help.
Yeah.
But also giving back. I actually really enjoy engaging with people on Twitter and LinkedIn when they have comp questions that I can answer. I'm like, oh, like, let me help you. Like, it shouldn't be such a mystery. Like, let me dive in. And I like to look at other, charities or things that I can participate through. It's been harder with the pandemic, obviously, but I used to do a lot of fostering of dogs. I love dogs. It's why we have a mascot as a little pup over there. And I think that those things also teach you. Like, I think something I've learned over time, if it's reading or painting or writing or exercise or volunteering, I'm constantly learning. And that excites me. That makes me feel really good that I'm staying in tune to the world around me, especially in the world where we're on Zoom 8 hours a day. Having that connection to humanity and feeling that drive where I'm like, I'm in the current too. Like, I'm not on the sideline just watching things go by, but I'm actually participating with the world. It helps me build a better business, because I think it also reminds me to stay in tune with my employees. It reminds me that, this salary board idea, we saw the laws roll in and we were like, we need to do something about it now. Like, it's a timely matter. We shouldn't wait. And it's going to impact people. And the second that we posted it, we started to get this outpouring of like, oh my gosh, I sent it to some customers. They're like, we have already been talking about this and we had no idea how we're going to solve it. Yes, we want to try this yesterday. And I don't think that you can pick up on those things or act quickly if you don't take a break when your brain has a cramp. Like, give yourself that creative or, societal or philanthropic outlet, so that when you go back to work, it's relaxed and poised to spring on that next opportunity that comes by.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing, you're not saying the word, but just rest, whether that be painting, whether that be, I've been talking to my husband a lot about active relaxation, where you're not necessarily napping, but like, we've been playing a lot of cards. We go up to go skiing with our kids, and it's very relaxing. You're using your brain playing cards, but you're not necessarily tuned into work. And like you said, the spreadsheet. So, and yes, absolutely. I couldn't agree more with the exercise and the giving back. So, well, Kaitlyn, thank you so much for sharing all
Yes.
of your wisdom and ideas, and congratulations on your growth and success. And thank you so much for the work that you're doing to support organizations, and whether it's DEI, equitable pay, supporting women and minorities. We need more of it, all of it. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I mean, I appreciate your podcast and focus as well. I think that there is a way to have a happy organization. I'm just really excited to see that someone's focusing in on that and helping spread the word to other companies that it can be done differently and in a better way.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks so much. Hope to talk to you again soon.
Yes, thank you, Tia.